Scientists locked a person in a room alone. No pain, no hunger, no threat of any kind. Within 72 hours, their brain started doing something that looked identical to physical torture, and the person hadn't been touched once. Most people assume loneliness is an emotion, something you feel when you miss someone, something that fades when you get busy. But that's not what the science says, and the real answer is far darker than anyone expected. Because loneliness isn't a feeling, it's a biological alarm system, and once it switches on, it starts dismantling you from the inside, quietly, methodically, without you ever knowing it's happening. Let's start with the experiment that changed everything. In the 1950s, a psychologist named John Zubek at the University of Manitoba began running isolation studies on healthy adult volunteers. The setup was simple: a private room, a comfortable bed, enough food and water, no pain, no discomfort, no danger of any kind, just silence and time. What he expected to find was boredom. What he found instead shook him. Within 24 hours, most participants reported difficulty concentrating. Within 48 hours, they began experiencing vivid hallucinations, not dreams, not daydreams, full sensory experiences happening while they were wide awake. Voices, shapes moving across the walls, the feeling of being touched by hands that weren't there. By 72 hours, several participants begged to leave, not because anything had been done to them, because of what their own brains had started doing to them. Zubek measured their cognitive function before and after. The decline was not subtle. Reasoning ability, spatial awareness, short-term memory, all of it had degraded significantly in healthy adults in just 3 days, from nothing but being alone. But that was just the beginning. In 2012, neuroscientist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago published research that reframed loneliness entirely. Cacioppo had spent 2 decades studying what chronic loneliness does to the human body, not the mind, the body. What he found was this: lonely people have measurably higher levels of cortisol, the primary stress hormone, running through their blood at all times. Not occasionally, constantly. Their immune systems show elevated inflammatory markers, the same markers found in people recovering from serious physical injuries. Their cardiovascular systems age faster. Their DNA repair mechanisms slow down. Cacioppo's conclusion was blunt. Chronic loneliness is as damaging to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Not metaphorically damaging, biologically equivalent. So why does being alone do this to us? The answer goes back roughly 50,000 years. For the vast majority of human history, being separated from your group was not an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. A human alone on the African savanna had no shelter to defend, no one to watch for predators, no one to share food with when the hunt failed. Alone meant dead, usually within days. Your brain knows this. It has always known this. So evolution built in a warning system. The moment your brain detects prolonged social isolation, it triggers the same biological stress cascade as physical danger: elevated cortisol, heightened threat detection, disturbed sleep, suppressed immune function, all of it designed to make being alone feel unbearable enough that you would do something about it. The problem is that the alarm was built for a world where doing something about it was possible. You walked back to camp, you found your people, the alarm switched off. But in the modern world, millions of people live in a state where the alarm never switches off, not because they're in physical danger, because the brain cannot tell the difference between being alone on the savannah and being alone in an apartment surrounded by 8 million people. The signal is the same. The danger is gone, but the damage keeps accumulating. And here's where it gets darker. In 2015, researchers at Brigham Young University analyzed data from 148 separate studies covering more than 300,000 participants. The question they were trying to answer was simple. Does social isolation actually kill people? The answer was yes, definitively. People with strong social connections had a 50% higher chance of survival over any given period than people who were isolated. 50%. That is a larger effect than obesity, larger than physical inactivity, larger than air pollution. Loneliness is one of the leading predictors of early death in the developed world, and almost nobody talks about it that way. But Cacioppo discovered something else, something that explains why loneliness is so hard to escape once it takes hold. Chronic loneliness changes the brain. Specifically, it changes the way the brain processes social information. Lonely people become hypervigilant to social threat. Their brains begin scanning every interaction for signs of rejection, hostility, or indifference. And because the brain finds what it looks for, they begin interpreting neutral interactions as threatening. A slow reply to a message, a distracted conversation, a colleague who didn't wave back. To a lonely brain, these are not minor events. They are confirmation of what the brain already suspects: that you are alone, that you are not safe, that the group has already decided decided to leave you behind. This is the trap. The biology of loneliness makes human connection feel more threatening, not less. It pushes people away from the very thing that would fix them. And the longer it goes on, the deeper the wiring goes. Cacioppo called it the loneliness loop. The more isolated you become, the more dangerous other people feel. The more dangerous other people feel, the more you withdraw. The more you withdraw, the more isolated you become. And your cortisol keeps rising. Your immune system keeps degrading. Your cardiovascular system keeps aging faster than it should. And from the outside, you look fine. This is the part that makes loneliness unlike almost any other health crisis. It is invisible. It carries shame instead of sympathy. There is no cast on the arm, no fever, no visible wound, just a person sitting in a room that feels increasingly unreachable. In 2018, the United Kingdom became the first country in the world to appoint a minister for loneliness. The government had commissioned a report that found more than 9 million people in Britain, roughly 1 in 7, reported feeling lonely often or always. The report cited loneliness as a public health emergency comparable to obesity and depression. 9 million people in one country feeling something their brain registers as physical danger every single day, and that was before the lockdowns. A study published in 2021 found that rates of loneliness had doubled in the United States during the pandemic, not increased, doubled, and the effect was not temporary. 2 years later, the numbers had not returned to baseline. The alarm was still on for millions of people. The cortisol was still elevated. The immune systems were still inflamed. The brains were still scanning every interaction for the threat that wasn't there. Here's what nobody tells you about the research. Cacioppo spent the last years of his life not documenting the problem, but trying to solve it. He wasn't interested in proving that loneliness kills. He already knew that. He wanted to know what actually reverses it, and what he found was both simple and difficult. The antidote to loneliness is not more contact. It is not more social media followers, more crowded rooms, more surface-level interaction. The research was clear on this. Lonely people can be surrounded by people and feel nothing. What reverses the biology is perceived connection, the sense that someone genuinely sees you, that your presence matters to another person, that you are known. One meaningful conversation does more to lower cortisol than hours of shallow social contact. One relationship where you feel genuinely understood restructures the threat detection patterns that loneliness builds in the brain. The alarm doesn't need a crowd to switch off. It needs one person. We have built a world optimized for connection on paper. More people than ever. More communication than ever. More ways to reach each other than at any point in human history. And we are lonelier than we have ever been. Not because the tools failed, because the brain was never built for this kind of contact. It was built for the fire. For the people who knew your name before you could say it. For the 25 faces you would see every morning for the rest of your life. That world is gone. And the alarm your ancestors never needed to silence for more than a few days is now running constantly in the background of modern life. In the offices, in the apartments, in the feeds. Your body doesn't know you have 800 followers. It only knows one thing. Are your people close?